Now, South Africans are tightening their belts as prices go up and because we're in recession. This always impacts on the retail sector, but Pick n Pay has reported a turnover of just over 41 million rand for the first 6 months of the financial year. This was at the expense of 3,500 jobs. The retailer also says it's also because of cutting prices on many everyday items and a move to get people into the stores during trying times. Now, Nesan Nair of Sasfin Securities joins us in the studio to discuss this further. Nesan, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. So, was it actually cutting jobs, or was it lowering prices, or a bit of both?
Listen, they had price inflation almost 0.3% to be exact. But I'm not sure, whether it was entirely to help out South Africans, because the volume increase was 3.5%. Now, if you look at Shoprite's results, which came out about a month and a half ago, they did something similar. They try to keep prices steady in order to attract more and more volume growth. It's a tactic by retailers in this time to actually grow their market share from smaller players. And Pick n Pay has done that very successfully by the looks of it.
Yeah. So let's take a listen to what they're actually saying about job cuts.
Well, the only people who got laid off last year is people who volunteered that they wanted to take early retirement. So we did a voluntary severance package with our staff. There were no pressed men, it was all volunteers. Clearly in retail, if a store ends up not performing, or the town changes its shape, or competition turn up, we can't guarantee everyone's got a job for life, because that's not the world in which we live. But we have no immediate plans to fundamentally change. We took those tough decisions nearly 18 months ago, and that's why we can issue a good result this year. And I'm very confident that on my watch we will employ more people rather than less people.
Can they actually do that?
Well, not in the current economic environment. I mean, right now, Pick n Pay, you must remember Pick n Pay has always been top-heavy. They've always had higher staff numbers, higher headcounts, higher costs per staff. So the job cuts were kind of inevitable at some point in time. Their trading margins are well below the rest of the market. So Shoprite has a trading margin of around about 4.5–5%. Pick n Pay is at 1.5%. So, I think the job cuts were kind of inevitable. But, in order to increase jobs and to grow, we're going to need a much, a better economy. We're going to need a lot more economic growth than we have now.
Now, the PI line, of course, is that we lowered prices because we know consumers are already suffering. So let's listen to what they're saying in that regard.
So the reality is when you watch for the the most vulnerable in society, that's where retailers have to do a better job, because it's a high percentage of their disposable income. Clearly, at the higher end of the market, people have got other things that they can give up on before they give up on their grocery shopping.
Seems like the obvious thing to do. You mentioned that other retailers tried it as well. Is it actually working for all retailers?
I think they've got no choice right now. I mean, if you look at the impact of the VAT increase, for example, the 3 Rand extra per litre of petrol that we're paying compared to last year, and the fact that we haven't had any employment growth, we've actually had unemployment growth. Invariably, there's a lot less money in the hands of consumers to spend on retail. And retailers need to react to that, and they react to it by trying to move price downwards or just keep it flat. And I think if you look at across the board, I mean, this is what we've seen in and amongst the retailers.
Yeah. Well, the fact that they can actually lower prices and still make profits of 41 million rand tells you that we're being overcharged in the first place, isn't it?
Listen, there are a number of drivers here. Remember that the turnover grew by 6.5%, of which 3.5% was volume, so they sold more stuff on a per store basis, plus they've added more stores in. What it really boils down to in terms of profitability is how well you control your costs. And, to an extent, you've got to look at your suppliers and see how much more margin you can squeeze out of them. Pick n Pay's margin was fairly static on the gross profit line. So, gross profit grew at the same level as turnover. Costs grew a bit higher, though. And if you go through the numbers in a fair amount of detail, their profitability, or their increased profits, which is 17% growth per share year on year, actually came from non-retail items. They sold a lot more airtime. They're one of the biggest providers of payment systems now for municipal bills and that sort of thing. And I just wonder, they're obviously involved in the new bank that's going to be coming out now. And I just wonder whether they're trying to see whether they're value-added businesses that come out of having a massive retail footprint, whether that is going to add incrementally to growth.
Okay. And then, of course, Pick n Pay says that there needs to be a more stable business environment in South Africa in order to see them through the difficult times. We'll chat about that in a moment, but let's have a listen.
What business needs is they need stability. They need people to have confidence that things will be there when they wake up in the morning, and anything that is instills confidence in the economy is good for everyone. If the country's economy is in good spirits, if the politics are stable, if the decision making is clear and understandable, and we have a clear plan to increase employment and encourage inward investment, it'll make it better for everyone.
So, of course, it's the new finance minister's maiden midterm budget speech. It's a tough balancing act for him.
Yeah, no, he's definitely had a baptism of fire. I mean, we saw him earlier on VBS Bank. Next Wednesday is when he delivers the medium-term budget policy statement. We call it the mini budget. It's ahead of the February budget. And I think everybody's looking for some sort of policy stability. I mean, so much has been said. We've got an election next year as well, so I think there'll be a lot more said with regards to changing policy in South Africa. And it's fine to change policy. The problem is it does create a little bit of uncertainty amongst business. And if business doesn't invest, jobs are not created. And if jobs are not created, retailers, unfortunately, bear the brunt of that. So we'll just have to see what the minister has in his budget next week on the policy front to get a clearer understanding of where that's going.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. Appreciate it.